Hi, welcome back to another edition of Northern Exposure. I'm Rick Halpern, a Toronto-based photographer, and my guest today is Terrell Halsey from Philadelphia. Terrell, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you introduce yourself and tell our audience a little bit about how you came to photography.
All right, yeah. Hello, everybody. My name is Terrell Halsey. Rick, thank you so much for having me on this show. I'm very excited to be here and talk with you about art and my art and some of my influences. And I got into photography. I mean, my parents always had cameras around. I mean, they weren't photographers, but they were always taking pictures. They were always not forcing us, but they always had us doing small creative things. And it eventually got to the point where my sisters and I have two sisters, we would just start doing these things, whether it's writing a small play and trying to, have little figures act the play out, or if it's me messing around on some type of video editing software that's not too good, but trying to piece things together. Um, but yeah, my senior year of high school. So I'm based in Philadelphia now. My family's from New Jersey, but I grew up in the Pocono area. So my senior year, I took a digital media class, and senior year is hard of high school because you're forced to think about, all right, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? And I know I can't see myself being a doctor. I can't see myself being a lawyer. I can't see myself being an engineer, just like crossing things off the list. Like, I don't want to do it just for the money. So what do I like doing? So I saw digital media arts, and I decided to take the class my senior year, and I fell in love with it. My friend and I, we would just make these creative videos, and we had camcorders and we had Final Cut to edit, and we just had a blast with that thing. And we didn't know that they were going to show everybody around the school our videos. But it was a good thing, because if they had, maybe we would have restricted ourselves a little bit. But we were just being our normal, goofy, creative, spontaneous selves on there. And the videos went around the school, and our videos actually won for like every different category. There's like stop motion, there was how to. Ended up going to Temple University in Philadelphia for film and media arts. And, I didn't know what exactly I wanted to do. I thought maybe I'd go to Temple, study film and media arts, and then you always hear people say, I'll go out to Hollywood and, I'll help make a film in whatever capacity. I loved editing. I loved that part of it. It's tedious work, but for some reason, I just love doing it. So my freshman and sophomore year was just experimenting and just playing with the craft of filmmaking. Making short videos, getting feedback, editing them, making them tight. It wasn't until about my junior year that I started to think more serious about art. Freshman and sophomore year, it would always, people would say, well, what are you going to do? Why are you studying that? Well, what are you going to do with that degree? And I would just say, I don't know. Like, I know that I like it. And it would be kind of discouraging. But I just kept exploring. And I eventually, got around the right group of people. And my wife now, she's a dancer, but we met our sophomore year. And she was like very far into her pursuit of art, where I was kind of like on the border. In high school, I played sports. So it was like a big difference. I feel like people always consider them as opposites. You can't play sports and you can't do arts. You can't be a person that does, multiple things. People just don't see it that way. But I had a lot of different layers that I was trying to peel through. So I went from the athlete and, you know, exploring in high school to now exploring in college, and meeting my girlfriend at the time, who was seriously pursuing her craft. It was just really inspiring. And the higher I got up in the classes, I was surrounded by people who were all serious about it, and they were all trying to pursue something within it, which forced me to look at myself and see, like, okay, what am I actually trying to do? Where do I fit in with this art life? And how serious should I be taking it? You know, because I'm spending money getting this degree, and if nothing comes of it, then, you know, sad to say, but it's almost like a waste to an extent. Not a waste, but you want to try to maximize that investment with education because it's not cheap. Junior year, I started to get more serious, and I got my first camera. So the summer after junior year, I got my first camera. I saved up, you know, on minimum wage jobs. I got a MacBook and I got a camera, and I said, okay, now I'm ready to create. And I wish I paid attention more in the film classes for the camera side, because that was a whole learning curve. I was a, I don't want to say I was a great editor, but I knew what I was doing with editing. I felt like I was good at it, but I was always scared to go behind the camera. I always say, okay, you can shoot it, I'll edit it. But when I got my first camera, I just started to play with it and try to learn it inside out, to the point where I'm taking pictures that are like just black exposures because I was like, okay, I don't want to shoot on automatic mode anymore. But after a long time of trial and error and YouTube tutorials, and senior year, I finally took a class in still photography. I was finally able to start seeing how to interpret and shoot things how I want to shoot them instead of how the camera shoots it for me.
Yeah, that's a
And
really important moment, isn't it? When you
yes,
when you
oh
start to
yeah, it's
realize
like a
you're in control and it's what is in your head that you can make the camera capture. Great.
exactly. My confidence started to, you know, go up because I'm like, okay, I have a vision, and now I'm able to uh, portray that in my images. You know, it's my vision. And man, that still photography class, we had to do a street photography section. And man, I just fell in love with it. Being from, you know, small town in the Poconos and going to Philadelphia, I already was very fascinated just walking down the street or just walking through the city and just reading all the statues, just reading all the art around me. As you know, Philly has all these mural arts
Right.
posted all around. So it's just a city very saturated in art. It's like contagious. So I was like a kid in a candy store. I was just absorbing everything, just taking it all in. And I didn't even know what it meant. But once I got that camera and we did the street photography project, I was just able to start now interpreting these moments through camera now. All right, here's a simple moment that I see, you know, passing, and I can capture it and tell a story. I've really been appreciating this journey, and I don't know what it is that draws me to street photography, but that feeling, it keeps pulsing. I have to go out, I have to shoot, I have to capture moments. And the deeper I get into it and the more people I talk to, they're saying, well, why are you attracted to certain things? You know, what stories are you unintentionally, you know, trying to tell people? You know, maybe you don't even understand it now, but maybe if somebody else looked through your work, they can see themes starting to, you know, rise up. And when I started doing that, that made it even more powerful for me because I was like, wow, these are the things that I've been seeing for all of these years. Maybe not the first couple years. First couple years was just experimental. Um, but yeah, these are the things that I have been seeing. And to be able to now look at your work and try to interpret it, that's a that's something in itself.
That's really great. I think lots of our viewers are going to be able to, relate to that journey that you laid out for us. And as you've mentioned, it's a never-ending road, right?
Yeah.
We're
Oh
always
yeah.
getting better. We're always learning. Hey, before we turn to look at some of the photos, You want to say a little bit about your work, sort of pulling photographers together, curating online exhibits? Because that's how you and I met,
Yeah.
really. And I think what you're doing there is really important as well. So I'm going to invite you to take a few minutes to talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks. Yeah, that's where me and Rick met. I made an Instagram account called Shots from the Soul, and the inspiration from that really just came from wanting to connect with other artists and people who are serious about photography. Whether they just like it as an audience or whether they're pursuing it themselves. But from my experience, it's been hard to connect with the core group. And I don't know if it's just, regional thing where I am, but a lot of the times photographers just kind of stay in their own zone, or they don't, I don't know if I was looking in the wrong places, but it didn't seem like a community. And I feel like the more that I started to find that, and, there's a lot of other groups online as well, but I just wanted to kind of cultivate something just strictly for serious artists, photographers. And I've managed to meet Rick on there, and I've met a lot of great artists just from creating that page all over the world. So
Let me thank you because I've met dozens of photographers through your putting us all together.
yes,
And, photography is a funny thing. When we're doing it, we're generally alone.
yeah, yeah,
Yet we do want to create a collective. And, you've done that with Shots from the Soul and with your online exhibits. I'm hoping that Northern Exposure becomes a place where like-minded photographers and visual artists can come together.
yes.
Look, maybe at this point we should turn to some photos. We're going to
Sure.
start with a photographer that speaks to you, maybe influenced you, and why don't we turn to those now? Okay, so here's a photo that you'd like to share with us. Terrell, take it away.
All right. So this photo is from artist and photographer Roy DeCarava. He actually was introduced to me by one of my mentors, and my mentor had told me, "You want to take your work to the next level, you need to look at Roy DeCarava's work." He said his work is what made me think about things differently and brought me to the next level. So for me, right there, I was like, okay, I got to check out his work as soon as possible, because if his work is making people have realizations and allowing them to think differently about photography, that's somebody who I want to study. But yeah, so he was the first Black photographer to win the Guggenheim Fellowship. And for me, being, a young Black photographer, and I think this is why my mentor mentioned him to me, is because just the perspective coming from, he was in Harlem when he made a lot of his work. So just coming from, a Black and brown community and capturing everyday moments, which we know as street photography. We know the Cartier-Bresons, and we know, Robert Frank's great work. And Roy DeCarava kind of reminds me of like a mix between the two. For me, it's like the soul of, Robert Frank, and the aesthetic and the eye, like the scientific, not scientific precision, but like the precision of composition of Cartier-Bresson. But then also for me, the cultural relationship to, the subjects, and just seeing, you know, little Black boys doing just normal things. Back then, that was a big deal. I mean, it still is a big deal now. But the portrayal of, Black and brown people in the media, they were often just, either slaves or criminals, uh, or dumb people who don't know anything, right? So to see these images of just the everyday neighborhood, and there's something so beautiful about it. It's it's that artistry. It's that, um, what I want to say. It speaks beyond what we're looking at. And at the same time, it's still, you can pull from the little nuances and the little things of symbolism with, maybe we don't know what's ahead up here with all the, shadow ahead, but we know that there's two young boys. They're very curious. They're playing. They're just enjoying life. And he captured them in a way that it looks like art. So,
Yeah, I really like how the boy in the foreground is looking off to the right, and his playmate is facing, away from him. He's it looks like he's on a hopscotch chalk diagram. And you're right, you got those two kind of odd lights out in the background, like what's out there.
hmm
And I really like the way you characterized Roy DeCarava's work as a sort of African American combination of Robert Frank and Cartier-Bresson. That's a good formulation.
yeah.
So, do you have another from Roy DeCarava, or do you want to move on to some of your own stuff?
We can move on to some of my own stuff. So now we have one of my images, and this picture itself was taken in Montego Bay, Jamaica. It was just a simple moment of, you know, two young boys of color just playing in a soap pool. So it was an event where they had a bunch of, soap foaming up and the fan was blowing it all over the place. And the inner child in me is like loving it. Like I'm sitting out there like, oh, this is so cool. And I see these two young boys and I snapped the picture. And as I was snapping the picture, and also as I look at it afterwards, it just more so means to me just kind of like the simplicity of a moment, but also how this moment almost seems kind of surreal. It's almost dreamlike because if we don't know who they are or where they are, we just see the soap suds. We see, the one boy kind of looking up, maybe in awe, and the other one looking off, but their demeanor doesn't really seem playful necessarily. And they're also covered in soap. And this bottom portion as well is just soap suds. So to me, it almost seemed dreamlike, but it also reminds me of like the curiosity and the playfulness of children. So
Yeah, that's great. I totally get what you mean when you call it surreal. I wouldn't have known that those were soap suds. And I was looking at it at first going, what's going on in this picture? So you're drawn into it both because you're curious, but also because it's a really nicely composed photograph. Nice.
all right. So this image here is an image that I actually looked past for a while. So it's one of those images that it took me 2 years to go back through my archives, and it caught my eye then. Um, to me, there's just so much to be said within this photo, on many different levels. You have, the two kids in the window, right? The two white kids in the window. We have the two black kids outside of the window. I just feel like there's so much to be said with this photo. I just called it Windows, and I just thought it was interesting because we have the two different worlds kind of peering at each other through the glass. And that was my main interest in it. Everything outside of that is extra, whether you look at, oh, well, his wrist is taped, or, what's going on over here with this guy who's overseeing, um, the sales sign inside, who's outside. I mean, I feel like there's just so much that you can draw from it if you want to. But for me, in simplest terms, this photo, I just liked how we have, the kids from different worlds staring at each other through this glass.
That really speaks to me too. I really like this shot, Terrell. Part of it is that although it suggests, a racial divide, these are kids, and particularly that little girl in the window, it's almost as if she wants to be on the other side of the glass.
Right.
And maybe left to their own devices, these kids could just play together.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really, I think, a really wonderful shot.
Thank you. And this last photo, but this photo itself is, I felt like it ended up being a solid photo, but I really included it because of the story behind it, which, man, like shooting in the city or just shooting street photography, you come across different stories and different subjects in different ways. And this was a picture that I never would have gotten, but I had my headphones in and this guy said something to me. And I thought that he was angry. I was just walking and I had my camera in my hand. I wasn't pointing it up to him or anything, but I saw that he said something to me and I took my headphones down and I said, "What?" And he said, "Hurry up and take my damn picture." And I was like, "What?" "Hurry up, take my picture." So I hurried up and I took his picture. So I just stepped back and, I set up to take a portrait. And this guy just busted this pose in like 2 seconds. I took the picture in like 5 seconds, but the confidence, like, right? Like the pride, the ability to just get right into this pose in 2, 3 seconds and demand that I take his picture that aggressively, like that really took me by surprise. And that's something that really has stuck with me like since then. So I brought this one more so for the story, but looking at him in this picture, I definitely see a lot of, pride and confidence and, a guy that's, comfortable with how he carries himself.
That's really nice. I think in all of the photos we've looked at this afternoon, what makes meaning is both the image that the photographers created, but what the viewers are bringing to it. And in this final image, it's your story. So
Yeah.
you're both behind the lens, right? And then
Yeah.
you're introducing the photo to an audience by providing a story that is really pretty personal around the circumstances of its creation. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah. Of
Thank you.
course.
Terrell, you said something about the second image of yours that we looked at, the one with the children looking through the glass, that really struck a chord with me, and I wanted to return to it.
Mm.
You had mentioned that you didn't process that photo right after you shot it. It sort of sat in the can for a while, and you came back to it. And I find this happens to me all the time, that I go back into the vault, as it were, and I look at photos that I've taken some time ago, sometimes even years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them just jump off the screen at me and I pass them over the first time. What do you think's going on there in our minds when things like that happen?
Yeah, I think there's many different things that go on, and the more I read on photography and kind of how our brain is processing it, the more amazing it becomes. As artists, we take every little bit of knowledge and personal experience that we have and we bring it to our artistry. So like, you as a historian, you have a lot to draw from there. And then also your personal experiences as just, living and what you study. And, for me, I bring my experiences and the things that I'm studying and even down to like the song that you listened to or the lyric that really struck a chord or the movie you watched but I think there's a quote by, I believe it's Alex Webb. I hope I didn't mess it up. But it says that our images are wiser than us because we all the time subconsciously make decisions when we do photography. We take a picture because we think it lines up nice, but our mind is like, we study this composition all the time. So we know what kind of registers as, aesthetically pleasing. But also we make subconscious decisions about what's within the photograph sometimes. And I think that's a beautiful thing because now you and I can say we didn't realize this at the time, but the more, I know you talked about letting them marinate, the more we let it marinate, we come back to it and now we see like, oh wow, maybe this is what I was capturing or trying to get at, or what I subconsciously picked up.
Yeah, in some ways, we're not the same person when we come back to it.
Right,
May-
exactly.
maybe we've learned something. Maybe our way of looking at the world has shifted a bit, but
Yeah,
we're different. So,
yeah.
okay, that's great. This has been a really wonderful discussion. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a real pleasure.
Hey, thanks for having me, Rick. It's been a pleasure for me.
We're going to have several new episodes dropping over the next 2 weeks, so make sure you catch them. Write to me. Let me know what you think. rick.halpern@gmail.com. And if you're a photographer interested in being on Northern Exposure, by all means, contact me. Let me know. I'll get back in touch.